Hello everyone and welcome back. My name is Jeb Smith, real estate broker here in Southern California, as many of you know. And in today's video, we're going to discuss the process of buying a home in 2021. Now, this video isn't going to be telling you that you need to buy a home in 2021, but it's going to be talking about expectations. It's going to be talking about what you're likely going to see in 2021 if you're a buyer out there. I'm going to give you my experience, what I'm seeing as an agent helping buyers in the current market, and also ways to strategize to help you as a buyer get your offer accepted. In some cases, you might not have the highest offer. You might not have the loan with the large down payment or be the cash buyer. So what can you do to help your offer stand out? That's what we're going to discuss in more detail. But before we do that, let's remember, right? Real estate is all local. So my market here in Southern California might be different than your market where you're watching the video. So, if you're in a market that has super high supply, so a lot of available homes on the market, then some of this information might not pertain to you. But what I'm hearing in networking with a lot of real estate agents across the country, a lot of top level agents, high level, high performing agents, is that they're experiencing markets just like the one we're experiencing here in Southern California, which is one where there are very few homes for sale. Properties are selling in just a couple of days on the market when they're priced right, and they're likely selling for over asking price and a lot of times in multiple offer situations. So it's a very, very tough market. So, we're going to talk about that. That's one of the things that we're going to discuss in more detail. And as I mentioned, we're going to give you some strategies to help your offer stand out, in the best way possible by using my experience of nearly 18 years in the real estate industry, some things I've talked to with other agents to help guide you in the right direction. As I mentioned at the beginning, Jeb Smith, real estate broker here in Southern California. If you're new to me, new to my channel, and you like all things real estate related, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. So let's start by talking about the current environment out there. What's happening in housing if you're planning on buying a property, and then we'll get into how to strategize, my experience out there and guiding you through that process. So right now, what we're seeing is a market with very, very low inventory. In fact, anemic inventory. It is so low, at least here in Southern California, levels that we haven't seen, I think they said since 2004 to some extent. In fact, I've never seen levels this low. In my present market, we have 121 single family homes on the market, or actually condos and single family homes on the market in a town of over 200,000 people. So not a lot of property out there. And so as a buyer, what you're going to encounter in a lot of situations is probably something similar. You're going to be out there, you're going to be ready to buy, your loan's approved, you're ready to find that perfect home, and then you're going to get on the market going, there's not really anything out there I like. And when you do find something you like, you might be in a position where you're up against other people, you're having to go above the asking price, and in a multiple offer situation, and just all of these things that most first-time home buyers don't want to have to deal with. And so, that is the reality of the market that you're going into. Now, if you're one of those people who are expecting, the process to be like you see on HGTV, where you go out and see 3 properties and you find the one you like and you put the offer in and it gets accepted, with a little bit of back and forth on the phone, that's not reality. That's not really how real estate works. So I'm not here to discourage you from the buying process, because that's not my intent. My intent is to set you with proper expectations so that when you go in, hopefully it's easier than this, and you walk away, super thrilled and happy that it wasn't nearly as hard as I said it was. But it's going to be, an arduous process for the most part if you're a buyer. For buyers in markets that are very, very competitive, if you have a lower down payment loan, if you're putting 3.5% down using an FHA loan, or maybe you're a VA buyer and you're doing 100% financing, or maybe you're just putting 5% down, while they're all great loans, and honestly, at the end of the day, money is money to the seller, you need an agent on your side to help convey how strong of a client you are, regardless of the type of loan financing you're doing. Because what happens is when you're in a position and you're up against multiple offers, once people look at the price, the next thing they go look at is the terms of the financing. How much are you financing? Because people often look at the amount that you put down as this idea that you're a more qualified client because you have more money in the bank or because you're willing to put more money down on the loan. That's true in some cases, but not always true. And so, sometimes it helps to have your agent try to convey in many ways that, you're a better client and go through that process. So what I'm getting at here is when you're putting less down, you're probably going to have a more difficult time than those putting a larger amount down. That's just to be expected in the environment that you're in. Now, as I mentioned, all real estate's local. So maybe you're in a market that has inventory, that has a lot of properties on the market. You may be able to go in with one of these loans, not have any competition, and it's not a problem. And if that's the case, awesome. That's fantastic. But I want to set you up with the expectation that that's probably not going to be the market, at least for the first half of the year, this year. I expect inventory will likely pick up as you start to get into spring. The vaccinations start to kick in. More people are less worried about the pandemic that's out there. You'll see more homes come to the market, but I think you're going to see buyer demand pick up with that because we're expecting interest rates to stay low. So as a buyer, you're going in a tough market. Now, what I'm seeing as someone that's helping buyers out there right now is that there's really not a lot out there in those entry-level price points. For our market, entry-level is completely different than it might be in other areas of the country, but our entry-level is going to be like sub 500,000. And there in our market, there's just nothing out there in that market. So it's really, really competitive for first-time home buyers and really difficult for a lot of first-time home buyers. So when they see something, it goes very, very quickly, often with multiple offers and above the asking price. So, my experience is that, as a buyer, you should be ready to go. When you start looking at property, you should be ready to write an offer that day if the right property came up. You shouldn't be out looking at property if you're just perusing or not really sure what you're going to do, because this is a competitive environment. Because if you fall in love with something, you want to be able to make a move. And so this environment is for those that are ready to make those moves and be willing to negotiate, right? You can't go in with the idea that you're going to offer less in most cases. Or that you're not willing to get into a multiple counteroffer situation. I often hear clients tell me, well, if they're sitting on a multiple counteroffer, I'm not getting in a bidding war. That's fair. That's a fair statement. But understand that if you're planning on buying within the next year, you're probably going to be in one of those situations. So it's important to know up front that, hey, your agent should be able to look at the closed sales in an area and say, hey, look, all of these properties closed at X% above the asking price or below the asking price or what have you, to give you an idea of what to expect going in. So if all of the properties in a certain neighborhood have sold for 2 to 3% over the asking price, just hypothetically speaking, then when the next one comes on the market, you have to have in your mind that you're willing to go up 2 to 3% above that price if you want to be competitive. That's the type of environment you're in. So that's where you need to approach real estate coming in this next year. So how can you help how can you make your offer stand out from the competition in an environment like this? What I will say from working with a lot of sellers is that more often than not, sellers are more worried about the price, the amount that they're receiving, because that's what's coming home to them. That's how they're going to buy their next house or the money in the bank. So very few people aren't worried about the highest price, but the majority are. So price is always going to be the number one factor that you got to keep in mind. But outside of that, how can you help your offer stand out? So if you're willing to get into multiple offer situations, if you're willing to bid above the asking price, which you're likely going to have to in some of these cases, is that there's escalation clauses that you can use. This allows you to go above and beyond other offers up to a certain price. And I'll link to a video here that explains escalation clauses in more detail. You can no longer, or you're no longer supposed to write love letters to homeowners. That's something we did for many, many years. Now it's a violation of fair housing. So we're not really supposed to do love letters, but there are some ways around it, some ways that you can write a letter to the seller without talking about yourself, that explains why you love the home. Your idea here is that you want to pull some emotion out of the seller, to help them choose your offer versus another offer. And so you can do that by talking about the property. Maybe they've done some upgrades to the home. Maybe they've done something to the property. So it's not really a love letter about you, so to speak, but more a letter about why you love the home, why you love the neighborhood, why you can see yourself there, and try to relate to the seller. That's something you can do to stand out. So outside of price, the escalation clause, and being willing to write those letters, which I recommend that you do, is get your seller to reach out to the listing agent on the other side and see if you're able to present your offer in person. As a buyer, this is a good strategy. See if the seller will let you present your offer in person, and you as a buyer show up with your agent and present your offer to the seller face to face, talk about it, and let them get to know you, because that isn't a violation of fair housing. As long as they allow everybody that asks to do that, then you aren't violating anything. So that will really help your offer stand out. Now, in some markets, some agents, they're not going to want to do that. They're not going to want to go through that process. A lot of agents aren't even comfortable doing that. But as a buyer, if you want to stand out, you've got to do things outside of the box. And this is one of the best strategies to do because no one is doing it. Get in front of the seller and present your offer. So, if I were a buyer in this market, which, I'm looking at property myself, trying to find out if there's something out there to make a move right now, because I'm kind of in a busting at the seams situation presently in my own family. And, I'm constantly looking at property. And so if I'm in the position where I'm going to be buying a property myself, these are things that I'm going to do. And so if I'm going to do them as somebody that's got boots on the ground day in and day out, these are things that I recommend you do as well. But understand that, in this market, you've got to be patient. You've got to go in with a full pre-approval. You can't just have a pre-qualification. It can't be a phone call with an online lender, over the phone and not provide any documentation. You need to make sure that all your documentation is up to date with the lender. You're fully pre-approved. They've taken a look at your credit, your income, your assets, all is good. They've run an automated approval if they're able to do so that when you're ready to write an offer, it's there. And then your agent can submit a full package when presenting that offer, and hopefully helping your offer stand out, because hopefully your agents reached out to the other side to find out what's important to the seller, and you're able to use that in your negotiation. So that's how I would help my offer stand out. Those are my expectations, in talking to buyers for this year, and what you should expect if you're a buyer. But again, I hope the process is a lot smoother than anything that I mentioned here today, but that should give you a good idea of where and how to approach the housing market in 2021. But if you have questions for me, comments, I love reading them. I love having dialogue. So do me a favor and comment below. I appreciate you taking the time to watch. I appreciate all the support. We'll see you again soon. Have a great day. Bye-bye.